Hi, everybody. I'm David Glueck. So I lead the data science and engineering team at Bonobos. We're a menswear retailer. We were founded online. So Bonobos was founded in 2007 as a e-commerce only company. And now we're the largest U.S. retail company that was founded online. Although now we've expanded into some wholesale and also innovative concept called guide shops, where we have physical stores with just enough inventory for people to try the clothes on, touch, feel it, but then you place your order online. So it acts much more as an extension of the e-commerce experience as opposed to the traditional retail store. And so I started the data science team in late 2012, so I've been at it for about 2.5 years. And it was an interesting experience for me coming from working at lots of data teams at much bigger companies because there was really no data team before I got there. So it was a great chance to kind of start fresh, no legacy technology to worry about, and really kind of rethink a lot of the assumptions that went into data teams in the past. So I started with what is data science? And when you look around at that, there's more answers than there are data scientists. Everyone has a different view on that, and I don't find any of them particularly helpful in the end. So I decided that I don't care, or more to the point, that there's probably a better question that we need to be asking, which is how do we get results? And that's what really matters. And so I thought about, for Bonobos, what does results mean? And the way I saw it is, first, automation and scale. So taking those things that people are doing every day, gathering data, trying to make decisions, operational decisions, and those kind of things, and figuring out how to automate it so that we can scale it up. Because if every time we sell 1,000 pairs of pants, we have to hire another person to manage all of the operations that go into that, that's no way to run a business, and that's not going to scale. It's not going to work for us. So that's one way we can add value. The next way is informing strategic decisions. And so for us, there's a lot of those. So one thing is inventory optimization. So how many products should we buy? How many of which color and which size? All of those things. And being that we don't have to worry about distributing our inventory across hundreds or thousands of stores, we have a real opportunity to do that better than the traditional retailer if we can get smarter about it. Then a lot of A/B testing. So A/B testing promotions, different promotion structures, different return and shipping policies, everything on the site, the traditional A/B testing on the purchase funnel and things like that. Where do we open those guide shops? Which markets are going to be the best for us? So all of those things that where we're making big bets as a company, data can help us make better decisions. So that was another area we can add value. And then personalization. Any e-commerce company needs to be thinking about personalization. Some more examples of that, but certainly in terms of the messaging on emails or on the site and the content itself, product recommendations, that kind of thing. And so then the next question was, if this is how we can add value, what do we need in order to get those results? And that really comes down to a team, and we need the technology to make that happen. So I started with the team. So the way we structured the team at Bonobos is one team with 3 goals. So first of all, there's the data science, the algorithms, the kind of deep analytics, looking for those insights into data. Then the BI and reporting. And I think this is kind of your traditional operational reporting, that kind of thing. I think what I've seen as a trend in the industry, a lot of data teams are starting to try and de-emphasize the BI and reporting. They kind of see it as, it's a lot of work, which it really is, and in the end, it doesn't add as much value to the business. It's not going to make you millions of dollars of incremental revenue or anything like that. And so I think what I've been seeing as a trend is more and more data teams tend to de-emphasize that part of it. I don't think that's a good idea. I believe that part is an important piece. I believe in the concept of democratization of data. I think the most valuable thing that any company has with its employees is their judgment, and they need that data in order so that they can get those insights and make better decisions. And I also think it's an important part for a data team to kind of really work side by side with the business, whether it's marketing, finance, planning, operations, so that you really understand, have your finger on the pulse of the business, understand what's going on, what the pain points are, what the struggles are. So I decided that needs to be part of the team. And then the data engineering, which again, it's kind of a mix, but I think a lot of data teams tend to have the data engineering part as a separate team underneath the kind of engineering organization rather than in the data organization. While I think that might be able to work. I find that I've always found in my past that that's a tough thing to pull off, because an engineering organization has its own priorities, its own agenda, and the kind of data science team has its own agenda. And unless you can get those priorities to align, you can't really get anything done. And our job as organizational leaders is to hire good people, set the vision and the direction, and then empower them to get the results. And so, if you're hiring a bunch of data scientists and then making them dependent on a different organization for engineering is basically hiring some really expensive people and then tying their hands behind their back. And that's not a smart thing to do, I don't think. So by combining the engineering and the data science into one team, that leads to empowerment, which is a necessity for the data team. And then I looked at the technology. So in the past, when I've looked at data technology, we tend to, a lot of times we use this analogy of a pyramid, right, or a house, building a house. And so the foundation is the data source systems, and then they have the data integration layer, the storage, the analysis, and it's all kind of this technology stack where everything is built on top of it. I don't think that's a great analogy. I don't think it works really well. It certainly hasn't worked for me in the past. And the reason I don't think it works well is because the analogy itself assumes that it's a rigid technology stack. And it's built to solve a problem. That problem is static. But in the world that I observe, the problems aren't static. They're constantly changing. They're constantly evolving. And so I think a different analogy is needed. And so I think it's something more along the lines of something, a system that can change. It's more of an organic growth model, something like a tree or a vine, something that can adapt to the world around it, that's constantly changing and as the environment around it changes. And with a tree, you can cut off a branch, and it doesn't mean that the whole tree collapses. It just means that it starts growing a new branch, or it adapts. And so how that translates into the technology that we use at Bonobos is to use more of a cloud-based model. We use a lot of cloud-based shared services with API interfaces in between them. And so, at one point we changed our sales system. We switched the website over to a whole new system, but we didn't have to touch the reporting system because everything kind of changed on the back end, but it didn't break everything else downstream. So that's the idea. The database storage, we switched from MySQL into Amazon Redshift, and we didn't have to re-engineer the entire system to pull that off. And that's only been in 2.5 years. We've made some of these big changes. So, if you want your system to last more than a year or so in today's world, you have to build something that's more dynamic and is capable of change like that. So that's how the technology stack evolved. So then let's talk about some of the learning. So what have we learned since we got all this in place? So first of all, on email. So again, personalization is important, and content matters, and not just good content, but relevant content. So we were able to find, even without changing the emails that we were sending out, the different product emails that we were sending out, just by being smarter about who we sent each email to, we were able to get sometimes as much as 4x the revenue for an email campaign. So it really matters making sure that the product is matched up with the individual person. And then the next one, which wasn't as successful, was the frequency optimization. So how many emails should I be sending each person? My previous job was at Groupon, which I think they abused that quite a bit. If any of you guys were on that list, you probably got, I think at one point we were sending out 3.5 emails a day on average to people. So, but now after doing some research at Bonobos, we found the reason why that happens. We did a longitudinal test. We ran it for 6 months, where one group was getting 1 email a day, one group was getting, 1 email a week, one group was getting 7 emails a week, one group was just getting 4 emails a week, and hoping to see how much is too much, and when does that start to turn. And certainly the people that got the most emails, we saw a higher unsubscribe rate, but we also saw a lot higher revenue from them. So this is the reason why people send so many emails, because for every person that unsubscribes, 5 more people actually make a purchase. So that's a difficult one. I think we all intuitively know if you're going to do what's right for the customer, you can't just keep blasting them with emails all the time. But it's a really hard thing to prove and quantify. So we're still trying to dig into that one and figure out a better way. And maybe it is that in the short and medium term it's beneficial, but at some point enough is enough. But we've got to figure out how to quantify that to convince the marketing guys. And then on the product recommendation side, this is a fun area. Personalization on the site and in email is an important part of any e-commerce company. What we found actually is that the algorithms are the easy part. So, I mean, it can certainly be difficult, but you get 80–90% of the benefit from a very simple algorithm, and most of the really hard math and work goes into closing the gap on the rest of it. But you can get a long way right out the gate just by getting a good algorithm. The hard part really comes down to the inputs and the outputs. So on the input side, what data are you plugging into that model? And obviously, purchase data is a great one. It's a very strong signal, because if someone's buying something, it's a pretty good sign that they want it. But it's also very sparse. So we have a lot of customers that have only made a couple of purchases or have never made a purchase. So we want to figure out what are they likely to buy, and they're the most important ones to try and get recommendations in front of, and we don't have any purchase data on them. So we try to supplement that with things like what have you looked at on the site, what have you browsed, have you added to your cart, that kind of thing. And then in the absence of that, we can look at demographic data, third-party demographics, and understand, where do you live, how old are you, those kind of things, and try to use that. And then one great thing about fashion, I think, and a lot of products, is that we can just go ask people, and that's a great source. So when someone's coming to your site and they want to buy clothes, they're looking for help, and so they're willing to give you information about what styles they like, what clothes they're looking for, and that's a very valuable data source that often goes overlooked. Is we can just ask people, and that's a great source of data as well. And then there's the output side. So there's lots of different ways you can surface recommendations. So I mentioned email. That's a pretty obvious one. There's site content. So on the product page, you can do the Amazon style. People that like this also like this other thing. But there's a lot of other ways you can do it on the, and so figuring out where it's most effective, where people are going to be most receptive to it, is a difficult thing. It takes a lot of work, because trying each one of those things takes engineering effort on the website or on the marketing side, creative effort. So that's been a lot harder than the math and the algorithm side. And then on the promotion side, so figuring out different promotion structures, and different policies as well in terms of our return policy. Is it free returns, or are there certain products that you can't return, free shipping, or is there a hurdle that you need to buy a certain amount before you get free shipping? All of those kind of decisions, trying to figure out what's the most effective way to do it, what's best for the customer, and also what's best for us in our economic model. So these are some very important decisions. And what we found is that the decision to buy is very elastic. So you can make small changes there, and you can really influence whether people are going to make that purchase or not make that purchase. But what's a lot harder to do is to influence what they're going to buy or how much they're going to spend. So in a lot of cases, even when we change the promotional amount, from 20% to 10%, people will adjust to that. So they kind of have in their mind a certain amount that they're willing to spend, and then they're not really willing. It's really difficult to get them to go over that amount. Sometimes we use tiered promotions where, the more you spend, the bigger discount you get. And that kind of works a little bit. People are willing to spend a little bit more, but a lot of times what you find is you get that, you lose that money back in terms of return. So they're more likely to return that extra stuff that they bought just to get over the hurdle. So that one is a much more difficult hurdle or metric to move. And although it's obviously still a very important one. So so those are some of the things we've learned. Thanks.
Is there a real-time component to this, or does that exist, or is that something that you guys want to do at some point where you see somebody doing something on the site, for example, and you're able to trigger something based on what you think that person is going to do next?
Sure, there's definitely a real-time component to part of this. We don't have much. That's a much more difficult problem, but I think it's especially important for the new customers when you really don't know anything about them, because in those first few moments, as they start looking at products, they start giving you information. It's important to be able to react to that very quickly, and it's also the most important and most impressionable time when you have somebody for that, making that first impression when they first land on the site. So it is a very important part of it.
And it exists, or is that something that you guys want to build, or what was whether at Bonobos or in the industry in general?
Well, I think the way we're approaching it right now is to use kind of the basic product similarity scores, and so that way when someone looks at a product, you can immediately show them other things that are similar to that product or relevant to that product. So at least it's within the context. I'd like to push it further where we can actually use information we know about people individually, but we're not there yet.
Great.
Are you at a point yet where you are feeding back to fundamental decisions about the design and of the product itself, or are you informing at a relatively later stage where the design is handed to you and you're helping with decisions around optimization and offers and things and insights and things like that?
Great question. We haven't got to the point where we're going back to influence the design of new products yet. I think that's it's definitely a touchy one. That's where you get into the design where there's a lot of intuition and subjective thought that goes into it, and so really convincing those guys that data can help inform them. I think it's definitely a direction we want to go. Where we have been is definitely in the reactive mode. So as soon as a product launches, we're looking at return rates very closely and trying to really find out if there is a problem with this product. Let's find out as early as possible so we can take action immediately and try to limit the damage both to our bottom line but also to customer satisfaction.
Hi. So what about cross-platform users? So obviously you're probably using cookies and such for desktop users, but people who are using mobile apps and
we track everyone. Well, actually, we don't have a mobile app, a native mobile app. We just have a mobile-enabled site, which is definitely a debate we must come up every couple of months is whether we should have a native mobile app. And I keep trying to delay because I think what you can do with a mobile-enabled site is kind of closing the gap between what you can do on a mobile app every day. So I'm not eager to kind of break off a whole different engineering team just for mobile development because it's a huge distraction. You have to develop every feature 3 times for iPhone, Android, and the web. But it is something we look at very much, especially in the world of marketing. So we use some marketing tracking vendors that help us track people across platforms so that we can know that the person that saw an ad on their phone is also the person that came to the site later and made a purchase. And then the other way we address that is by getting people to log in. And so right now there's really not a big incentive to log in except when you kind of get to the end when you're ready to make a purchase. But that's where some of these personalization features, recommendations, and those kind of the style quizzes and things like that where people give us personal information come in. That creates an incentive to log in and give us your information early on. And then we have a much better way of matching you up and knowing who you are.
Really good data on the contact frequency and optimization. One question, when you said it was very mixed around frequency, did it cleave a little bit between contacting prospects versus existing customers in terms of the response, whether it's unsubscribe or you got more revenue? Might there be some differences there in those two segments?
There are definitely some differences. I think that's kind of the next phase for us is really tease apart, where we can find those differences. I think. Yeah, it was difficult. I think obviously the existing customers are much more receptive to a lot more email because they've already kind of shown an affinity for the brand. I don't think it's that clean though. Everybody seems to have different preferences. Even among the existing users, there's some people that really don't want any email but just want to do primarily online or social media. So I think it takes a lot. It seems like it's very complicated to kind of dig in and really figure out those segments, but I think that's really the next step for that study is to figure out how can you break that apart and really see those differences, but I haven't got there quite yet.
Thank you.
Last question.
On that question, actually, I was thinking there can be segments of people who sign up, who create one email just for online shopping, where they receive all these marketing emails. Those people might be people who don't unsubscribe to emails versus people who only use their one main email to subscribe to your product or anybody else's. And if you send them more emails, they'll unsubscribe versus the other people who just use that email for particular use. Mm-hmm. So that might be something to look at.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Identify kind of people.
Yeah, what we found basically is that the unsubscribe rate's not a great signal just because so few people do it. So we also have to supplement that with looking at open rates and click rates to really understand engagement, because I think that's the right way to look at it, is that people have a fixed, attention is a resource, and so we only get so much of people's attention, and so we got to make sure we don't waste it and squander it. And it's just as bad if someone just ignores us as if they unsubscribe from us, and so we have to look at that as being the same thing, basically.
Great. Well, David, thanks very much for being here.
Thank you.